The first time Alara Voss saw him, he was kneeling on the cold marble floor at sunrise, tying a tiny shoe with the kind of care most people reserved for fragile glass. And for a moment, just a flicker, something inside her perfectly controlled world shifted in a way she did not understand. Before we dive deeper into this story, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of people who carry unseen burdens, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Wisdom Story House. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Alara Voss was known in every business magazine as the woman made of ice. At 32, she had built a billion-dollar logistics empire from nothing but discipline, precision, and a refusal to feel anything that might slow her down. Her employees feared her silence more than they feared losing their jobs. Her board admired her ruthlessness. Her competitors avoided her altogether. She lived in a glass penthouse that overlooked the city, a place so immaculate it felt untouched by human life. No family photos. No clutter. No warmth. Every morning was the same: black coffee, tailored suit, a car waiting downstairs before the sun fully rose. That morning, however, something was different. The elevator in her residential tower had malfunctioned, forcing her to take the service entrance, a path she had never used before. That was where she saw him. The security guard. His uniform was slightly worn, his posture disciplined but tired, and beside him stood a small boy clutching a backpack almost too big for his shoulders. The man, his name tag read Ryan Hale, was focused entirely on the child, adjusting his collar, smoothing his hair, whispering something that made the boy smile despite the early hour. Alara paused without meaning to. She didn't know why. She wasn't used to scenes like that. Care. Softness. Patience. The boy looked up, noticed her, and instinctively stepped closer to Ryan. The man turned, meeting Alara's eyes briefly. There was no fear in his gaze, no desperation, just quiet acknowledgement before he returned to the child as if nothing else in the world mattered. Alara felt something strange then, something she dismissed immediately as inconvenience. She walked past them without a word. But she remembered. Over the next few days, she began noticing him more often. Ryan worked the early shift, always arriving before dawn, always leaving just after noon. And somehow, the boy, Kai, was always with him in those early hours. Sitting quietly in the security booth with crayons. Reading a book. Occasionally dozing off with his head resting against the desk. It irritated her at first. This was a professional building, not a daycare. But what irritated her more was the way the child never made noise, never caused trouble, never demanded attention. He simply existed quietly beside his father, like someone who had learned far too early not to take up space. Alara brought it up in a management meeting once, her tone sharp and controlled. Policies were policies. Exceptions led to disorder. But when she asked for Ryan's file, something unexpected surfaced. Widower. No extended family. Previous employment terminated due to attendance issues. Single parent. Alara closed the file with more force than necessary. She told herself it changed nothing. And yet, she said nothing more about removing him. Weeks passed, and something subtle began to shift in her routine. She found herself leaving 5 minutes earlier than usual, just enough time to cross paths with them in the service corridor. She never spoke. She never acknowledged them beyond a brief glance. But she watched. She saw the way Ryan packed a small lunchbox with care, always slipping in something extra, a folded note, a small treat. She noticed how Kai always hugged him before leaving for school, holding on just a second longer than most children would. And she noticed something else. Ryan was always tired. Not lazy tired. Not careless tired. But the kind of exhaustion that sat deep in the bones, hidden behind a straight back and steady hands. One morning, everything changed. A sudden downpour hit the city, flooding the streets and halting traffic. Ilara's driver was delayed, and she was forced to wait in the lobby, something she hated more than anything. That was when she saw Kai again. Alone. He was sitting on the bench, clutching his backpack, his eyes fixed on the entrance doors as rain lashed against the glass. Ilara frowned. Where was his father? Minutes passed. The boy didn't move. Something twisted uncomfortably in her chest. Finally, she approached him, her voice sharper than intended as she asked why he was still there. The boy hesitated before answering in a soft voice that barely carried across the marble floor. His father had gone to help someone in the basement parking area where the flooding was worst. He told him to stay and wait. Ilara felt irritation rise again. Irresponsible. Reckless. But as she looked at the child sitting there, small, patient, trusting, it wasn't anger that lingered. It was something else. Time stretched. 10 minutes. 15. 20. Then finally, the elevator doors opened. Ryan stepped out, soaked from head to toe, his uniform clinging to him, his face pale with exhaustion. But the moment he saw Kai, something in him lit up. Relief. Pure and immediate. He rushed forward, kneeling again, checking the boy, apologizing, making sure he was all right. Kai simply smiled and hugged him. Ilara watched the scene unfold, something inside her tightening in a way she could not explain. And then she saw it. Ryan's hand trembled. Just for a moment. Barely noticeable. But she saw it. That was when suspicion began. Over the following days, she paid closer attention. The tremor appeared more often now, subtle but undeniable. His movements were slower. His face more drawn. And yet, he never complained. Never asked for help. Never faltered in his duties. Until the morning he collapsed. It happened quickly. One moment he was standing at his post, the next he was on the ground, unconscious. Chaos erupted. Ilara moved before anyone else did. She didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She ordered an ambulance, ensured Kai was kept away from the scene, and stayed until Ryan was taken to the hospital. She told herself it was responsibility. Nothing more. But when the doctors called later that day, everything changed. Ryan Hale wasn't just exhausted. He was dying. A rare blood disorder. Advanced. Untreated. He had known. 4 months. Ilara sat in silence after the call, the weight of that truth pressing down on her carefully constructed world. He had known. And still, every morning, he tied his son's shoes with steady hands. Still packed his lunch. Still showed up. Still smiled. Something cracked inside her then, quietly, but irreversibly. That night, for the first time in years, Ilara did not return to her penthouse. Instead, she went to the small, dimly lit apartment listed in Ryan's file. Kai was there. Alone. A neighbor had been checking in, but it was clear the situation was fragile. The boy opened the door cautiously, his eyes wide. Ilara didn't know what to say. She had negotiated billion-dollar deals, commanded entire industries, but standing in front of a frightened child, she felt utterly unprepared. Still, she stepped inside. Days turned into something unexpected. Temporary became necessary. Necessary became permanent. Ilara arranged care, medical consultations, specialists, everything money could buy. But the disease had progressed too far. Ryan returned home, weaker but still himself. And when he saw Ilara there, sitting at his small kitchen table, helping Kai with homework, he didn't react with shock. He simply nodded. As if, somehow, he had expected her. Their conversations were few, quiet, heavy with unspoken truths. Until one evening, when he finally revealed his secret fully. He wasn't afraid of dying. He was afraid of leaving Kai alone. That was the only thing that kept him awake at night. That was the only thing he had never been able to solve. Elara felt something shift again, deeper this time, undeniable. For the first time in her life, success felt irrelevant. Because there was something she could not control. But there was something she could choose. And she did. She promised him. Not with dramatic words. Not with grand declarations. Just a simple, steady promise. Kai would not be alone. Ryan passed away 2 weeks later, in the early hours of the morning, his hand resting lightly over his son's. The world did not stop. The city did not change. But Elara Vos did. She moved out of the glass penthouse. She sold it within a month. And she moved into that small apartment, the one she would have once dismissed without a second glance. Because that was where Kai felt safe. Life became something entirely new. Messy. Unpredictable. Human. There were school runs, late-night fevers, quiet moments of grief, and unexpected bursts of laughter that echoed through rooms once filled with silence. Elara learned things she had never needed before, how to cook simple meals, how to comfort nightmares, how to listen without solving. And slowly, something remarkable happened. The woman made of ice began to thaw. Not all at once. Not completely. But enough. Years later, when people spoke of Elara Vos, they still mentioned her brilliance, her empire, her success. But they also spoke of something else. Her kindness. Her quiet philanthropy. The scholarships she funded. The families she supported. The way she looked at the world, not as something to conquer, but something to care for. And always, somewhere nearby, there was a boy growing into a young man who carried his father's quiet strength, and her unwavering resolve. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe even a little more in the power of kindness and unexpected second chances, take a moment to like, comment, and share. Stories like this remind us what truly matters. And before you go, here's a special request. Comment the word hope if you believe that even the coldest hearts can change. Because sometimes, the greatest transformations don't come from power or success. They come from a small pair of shoes being tied carefully on a cold morning, and a promise that changes everything.